This is openSUSE Tumbleweed 2018-02-22 with the KDE Plasma 5.12 desktop. At the time I'm recording this was the latest release of the rolling release version of openSUSE. As you can see on openSUSE.org, you have the option between Tumbleweed, which is get the newest Linux packages with our rolling release, fast, integrated, stabilized, tested, or using Leap, get the most complete Linux distribution with openSUSE's latest regular released version. Leap is based on the repositories of the commercial version, SUSE Linux Enterprise, but it has additional software added by the openSUSE community. So this is Tumbleweed. It has KDE Plasma version 5.12.1. It's got kernel version 4.15.4. It comes with LibreOffice version 6.0.1. In short, it's a good way to get the latest software from a well-established distribution, which is what openSUSE is. Now, there are lots of ways to get software. If you look under System, you'll find Discover. I used this to download Simple Screen Recorder, for instance. A couple things I wanted to point out. If I look for MuseScore, it says here in light gray on lighter gray, sorry, nothing found. However, let me go to Settings. Now if I go up here to flatpak, I can make default, I can add source, or I can add FlatHub. I'm going to add FlatHub. Okay. Now here's the central repository of flatpak applications. So now if I search for MuseScore, I have to update the software. Enter my password. Try again. And now it finds it immediately. If I click on MuseScore, not only does it find it, but if you look down here at the bottom, it says source, FlatHub, parentheses, flatpak. So this is a flatpak installation, and installing it is quite simple. Just click on Install, wait. It shows the task down here, 56-57%. It also shows a progress bar up here. And it also shows a progress bar down here under Applications Discover. So you can see in 3 places that something is happening. Now it suddenly asks me for authentication, so I'm going to enter my password and click on OK. Now it asks me for authentication again. OK. Still installing. It says down here, tasks 96%. Here it says tasks 100%, but it's still installing up here. Generally, the flatpaks take a little longer to install than ordinary software does. All right, now it says remove, so MuseScore is installed, but it took a good long time to do it. And here it is. It also takes a while to load. But it is the latest version, 2.1.0. This is the way the desktop came. This is the folder view by default. This has been true of the last few iterations of Plasma 5. And it still has this little control center up here. I want to get rid of that. But I'm going to right-click on the desktop, go to Configure Desktop. I don't need that little control center. Going down here to Tweaks, I'm going to uncheck Show the Desktop Toolbox, and then click on Apply. Now, as you can see, that little thing is gone. I'm going to go up here to Wallpaper, and where it says Folder View, I'm going to go down to Desktop Containment, as it's now called, and Apply Now. And as you can see, those little folders are gone. I can still add a folder view widget to the desktop if I want to. As far as the desktop backgrounds, it only has two by default. One is this one by the openSUSE artwork team, and the other one is this one by the KDE Visual Design group. They're both okay. If I wanted to add another one, I could click on Get New Wallpapers. Kind of hard to see them in these small thumbnails. Just for one, I'll click on this one. And it's presumably installed. So now it's available. I don't have to activate it, but if I want to, all I have to do is click on it and then click on OK, and nothing happens. Going back to Configure Desktop. I'm going to click on Apply now. There it is. And OK. Of course, you can also get images from Google Images or anywhere else that you want to go for images, your own photo collection, for instance. Now, this video is not specifically about the installer, but I wanted to mention a few things. This was the traditional openSUSE installer, and I've done videos about that in the past. There have been some changes, but one thing I've always had difficulty with the installer is configuring the Wi-Fi interface from the installer itself. Of course, once you get into the operating system itself, the network manager is available. But to make it simple, I suggest using a wired connection while installing, which is what I did. As you can see, if I click on Networks down here, my wired connection is in place. However, I'm going to disconnect from that, and I'm going to connect my wireless. So click on this one and then click on Connect and enter my password. And then click on Connect. And immediately I get this obnoxious request to enter the same password again to the KDE wallet system. I really hate this, as I've said many times. Almost every other desktop except KDE Plasma allows you to enter your encryption key once and it stays current. Just to make it simple, I'm going to change this to the classic Blowfish encrypted file, even though the GPG encryption affords better protection according to this. And then I'm going to click on Finish. Now I have to enter my encryption key again. And again, and now click on OK. And now it wants me to authenticate it again. And finally, my Wi-Fi is enabled. As I've often said in the past, this is one of the most obnoxious features of KDE Plasma. Otherwise, I like KDE Plasma. Going back to the installation for a minute, I strongly suggest that you do connect to the internet by one means or another while you're installing Tumbleweed. It does give you the opportunity to take care of a lot of business during the installation, which otherwise you would have to do after you installed it. Now this is the application menu, the one I prefer actually, and this comes by default. As with other versions of KDE Plasma, you have options under alternatives here. You have the application dashboard and the application launcher. Here's the application dashboard. Click on switch. And there's the dashboard. And here's the launcher, which I've never liked. This is the traditional KDE Plasma menu. You click on Applications here, and then you go from one single screen to the other. And you have to go back to go from one thing to the other, but it's still an option. That's okay as long as I'm not stuck with it. I'm going back to the application menu. Under Settings, it has Configure Desktop, and as before, this is a little bit confusing because this is completely different from the Configure Desktop that you get when you right-click on the desktop. This configure desktop is a settings window, and these are basically the KDE Plasma settings. So you have appearance, workspace theme, you have look and feel. There doesn't seem to be too much of an option there. Under desktop theme, it appears that openSUSE is the one that is selected. Under cursor theme, this is the Breeze theme. Under splash screen, which of course is only seen for a short time, openSUSE is selected. Now I can get new looks by clicking down here, but I'm not going to bother doing that now. One thing under desktop behavior, first of all, I'll enable 4 desktops instead of the 2 that are enabled. And click on apply. And that of course shows up down here in the desktop switcher, but it also shows up in the desktop effects. I usually get rid of most of these effects, but I'm going to leave them in here for now. But down here under desktop grid, I find that very useful, and I'm going to leave that enabled. If it weren't enabled, I would enable it, and by pressing Control F8, I can see everything that's on all 4 of my enabled workspaces, including the things that are hidden. So I find that very useful. However, if I don't want to bother using the keyboard, I can change the active screen corners and edges. And this one up here is already enabled, and it shows present windows on all desktops. It presents the active windows on all desktops. I'm going to have no action there. And then over here on the far right edge, I'm going to click Desktop Grid and then click on Apply. So now when I go over here to the far right, I get the desktop grid. Of course, I also get this little thing that shows me I'm approaching the screen edge. That can be turned off if you want to get rid of it. Of course, you have the traditional YaST control center. Under System YaST, what's my password? And this is YaST. There's a utility for adding some add-on products, and I already used that to add on the Pacman repositories. There's a lot of hardware configuration, system configuration, network services, a lot of security options here, virtualization options. Then there's release notes and a few miscellaneous items. However, up here at the top you also have software management, which is listed separately, And this is another way of installing and removing software, and this is native to openSUSE, not necessarily to KDE Plasma. So if I wanted to search for LibreCAD, I find that it's available. Version 2.1. I think that's fairly up to date. So I click on Accept. Gives me a summary. I click on Continue. And I can see what's going on. So that's done. I find LibreCAD here under Graphics. And this is initializing it. I want to show inches in English. OK. And there it is, ready to use. And of course you can install software with the command line. Of course, this is openSUSE. It's not Debian or Ubuntu. So if I go to the console here, I'm going to enlarge the font. I'm going to enlarge it even more. Now I can see what's going on here. I'm going to type sudo zypper, Z-Y-P-P-E-R, install, let me install Audacity. Press enter, enter my password. Do I want to continue? Yes. There's a few comments here at the bottom, but basically Audacity is installed. Should be under multimedia, and there it is. Ready to go. So basically you have Discover, the YaST software manager, and the zipper command line procedure for installing and removing software. Now let's just take a look at the resources being used. Under System, KSysGuard. It's using quite a bit of my CPUs, but that's because I've got Simple Screen Recorder running. Without Simple Screen Recorder, it was running about 3 or 4% of the CPU capacity. And right now it's using 0.66 gigabytes of 3.7 available. Not too bad with Simple Screen Recorder running. And it's using 0 swap. Now it says that no swap space is available, which is a little bit surprising to me because I installed a swap partition. So let me see what I can do about that. So let me install gparted. This time I'm going to try the terminal in the super user mode. Again, we've got a very small text up here. I'm going to enlarge it a few times. Now it asks me for my password right away. And now I'm ready to go. I'm going to try this zipper, install gparted. Continue, yes. All right, so that's done. So here's gparted. Enter my password. That's my internal drive. And I have this installed on my external drive. And there is a Linux swap partition. But I'm going to select that and then click on partition. And I have an option to turn the swap on, so apparently the swap was turned off by default. I'm going to turn that on. Now you can see the swap partition is locked. And I'm using 0 swap of 4 gigabytes. Of course, as usual with KDE Plasma, you have the option of moving your panel around, changing the screen height. Here I'm going to move it over here. I don't really want to leave it over there, but there it is. It can be moved to any of 4 edges. I'm going to move it back to where it was. These are all things that have been available in KDE Plasma for some time. Change the height. I wish they'd let you do it with numbers, but they don't. Now you can get rid of that option here by clicking on Lock Widgets. If you ever want it back, you have to right-click on the panel and click on Unlock Widgets. Let me try the appearance again. Settings, configure desktop. Now this again is the KDE Plasma system settings. And now I'm getting the things I expected to see under look and feel. I don't know why they didn't show up before, but this is what I've experienced. A few glitches here and there, but no disastrous crashes. And this is the openSUSE theme. There's also Breeze Dark, if I want to apply that. And it's pretty clear that it's applied. Of course, you have the same options to get widgets that you've always had. Widgets are unlocked. I can go to Add Widgets, and I get a whole series of them. Of course, the usual analog clock. The weather forecast. Not showing me very much, so let me go to weather forecast settings. I right-clicked and I got that, and it wants my location. BBC Environment Canada, NOAA's National Weather Service. How about that? But that doesn't tell me everything. Let me search for locations. Not getting anything. Let me try America, Chicago. Click on search. No weather stations found for America, Chicago. Let me just try Chicago. Search. Plenty of weather stations. I prefer Midway Airport. And click on Apply. Okay. Now I have a weather widget. And of course these are the desktop widgets. You can also add widgets to the panel. You can subtract widgets from the panel. So basically Plasma 5.12 has maintained most of the functionality of earlier versions of the KDE Plasma 5 desktop, and it's added a few things of its own. I've also found that this system works with all of my existing hardware, which is an important consideration for me. So whether I wanted to use this or the slightly more stable Leap series would depend on how important having the latest software was to me. This is XRAM Tech. Thanks for watching.